Is everyone good with minutes?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. Correction in there. Okay. Minutes are correct. So, let's see, we got that here. Stuart.
Did you notice that?
No, I didn't. I know it's,
I think we'll get,
it came from the fund.
if we can get right on with the Three Corners intersection first. So we're looking for, I don't know, we got a lot of things to discuss about that, but easements are first thing, and you want to
Just
update
wanna-
us where
yeah.
we're at?
Just want to give a quick update, kind of an update on the project, but the project right now surrounds the easements. As I mentioned a couple of meetings ago, Charlie Spear, there's two major, actually three significant easements to sign. The two bigger ones are from Charlie Spear and Matt Dunn. Charlie Spear has signed his, although there's some questions on the language. We're just making sure we got that right in the state of Vermont. We're still waiting back to hear from them, but he's agreed to sign it, and that's moving forward. On the Matt Dunn one, if you recall, he had asked for essentially like a letter stating that we would maintain the parking lot back a while back when we discussed this as a board. I put that together, and the second thing that he had asked was if it was permissible, if it was possible to do septic underneath the parking lot, if we would be allowed to do that. He doesn't have a concrete answer on that at this point in time, but to, instead of slowing things up, he asked if we would be willing to essentially, if he found out that it was possible, if he was to do the work at his expense, and to, if he could dig it up and put it back together, but the ability to put a septic system in there, I thought that that corresponds with kind of the spirit of the discussion. But I just wanted to ensure that the board, I'm okay with that. And I put together a letter stating that, sending it to Matt Dunn. I just wanted to make sure that I'm not too far out of bounds on that thought process, that, you know, that if he needed to put a septic system in, and the location could be underneath that parking lot, that would be permissible to the town. I have given him two form letters stating that. He has come back, and I would agree with this, that, okay, it's good to have it in letters, but let's put it in the actual deed easement language. And I passed that on to Rob Mamby, who is now on vacation for, I think, another week. Anyways, he took last week off. I think he's out this week. So that is progressing, and Rob will help put that language together when he comes back. But as far as the septic system goes, I just wanted to make sure that we agree with that is something that the spirit of things that kind of falls in line with his original request.
I thought we had discussed this, that somebody didn't like that idea, like the state, or, I thought there was a dissent there.
So I think that the thought process was, is if it was permissible, then that was something that we would,
That's right. We
entertain.
we had a number of different issues from Matt early on, and we whittled it down to basically the extra parking lot and the easement for the septic, I believe. I think
So
that is right.
it's okay to put a septic system under a road?
Well,
It would have
Or
to be,
parking lot.
it would have, he'd have to come with a permit, he would have to come with a permit.
If you can do it, it's all right. The engineering hasn't been done, so. So, in the event that Matt's system has failed, that will be a possibility if it passes the engineering specs to put a septic system there, which it is possible. Chances are you can.
Oh, okay, all right.
But I believe the language would be, it would need to be permissible to the permitting authority, I think is the language we're kind of being thought about. So he can't, just throw it in there, he would have to have a permit for it.
So we don't know yet if it's permissible.
We don't even know if he really needs it or if it's permissible. But the thought process is that if the system now were to fail or something were to change and he needed a spot and that were permissible, would we allow it? And I think the answer in the spirit of things was
Yes.
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Mhm.
Sorry. Okay. So, the third easement is just gonna hang out there until
Until,
we can live without it if we never get it.
I don't have strong hopes that may come to fruition.
Well,
I
we'll see.
mean, it may, but, at the moment, when he comes in, he's, not favorable at that point.
Okay. All right, so, I guess the next thing to talk about is the idea of burying the utilities, and do you wanna address that, Matt?
I'd be happy to. As the board I think knows, several months ago, when we were first talking about the easements and other kinds of things, I was asked to work with the town manager to explore the actual feasibility and costs of the burying of the utility lines. As you may recall, that I think it was 4 years ago when the intersection funding was approved at town meeting, I and a number of other people brought up the question of whether the utility lines could be buried, at the feasibility of that, since in the depiction that was presented by the engineers, it depicted a lovely landscaped intersection with no utility poles, which was, I think, exactly what many of us would have hoped for. At the time, I think Bob had said no, that was just not included in the picture, but that they had not dug deeply into the issue of burying utility lines, and many of us suggested that folks do so. There was then a estimate that was banted about of over $1 million to bury the utility line. As things progressed over a period of time, after I was actually a landowner in the village, which I had not anticipated at all when I had brought up the issue at town meeting, and we had a discussion from the experience that I had working for Google, and specifically Google Fiber, where we buried thousands and thousands of miles of utilities throughout the United States. That amount of money seemed to be much, much higher than I would have imagined, especially considering the small scale, and that we were already digging up the entire intersection. So working with the town manager, we reached out to Green Mountain Power directly. They came back to us with an estimate for doing their part of the burying of the utility lines at a significantly less costly amount. I think in the neighborhood of $70,000–$75,000, and that is significantly different than the over $1 million. Since that time, we then got estimates for excavation, for actually doing the ditching that was necessary to put in the conduit that the electrical would go into. I believe you have estimates on that, which are in the $150,000 range. And then we've also been working with now Two Rivers Regional Planning Commission to reach out to the other utilities. And without a whole lot of effort, we were able to get Comcast to come back to us and say they'd be willing to bury the utility lines. First Light is still getting an estimate, but emailed today to say that they are earnestly figuring out what it would cost to do it. And detail, I don't think we've heard from yet, but I'll be seeing Sam, who will be in charge of that engineering piece of it shortly. We'll be managing the project in Springfield. And I would say that the estimates from the individual line owners are going to come in higher than they would when you actually are all doing it together. There's some what they're going to give us is the estimate, or if they were by themselves going and taking the Comcast lines and dropping them down into a conduit. There are lots of economies of scale when you do it all at once. You share vendors, and you can get that cost down. So I was, I would say, relieved that the cost was not as high as had been originally suggested. And that's because this is a once-in-a-generation project. And with this once-in-a-generation project is a once-in-a-generation opportunity. And that opportunity is to make the central village for the town of Hartland, the gateway into the town of Hartland, something that is not only safer and walkable, but one that is actually beautiful. And my understanding is that there wasn't resources necessarily put into the original budget for landscaping, much less things to consideration of if you're going to dig up the entire intersection for an entire season, and the impacts that that's going to have to do it right, to be able to actually bury those utilities in conduit that can be used for future utilities, so that once you've got that infrastructure in place, it's much easier for other providers who may be coming through or wanting to serve the community to be able to do so. The scope was limited to the area that was going to be under construction, and we have some pretty good maps now, which I hope has been shared with everyone. If they haven't, I'm sure the town manager can share those with you. But it is a moment in time where being able to do this, we're going to do this project, and I believe we should do this project. But at the end of the day, we don't want to go through the rigmarole of this project, including, I think, some of the real concerns people have about traffic being backed up and everything else, but also to have it look ugly at the end of the day. The potential for this is really to be great and positive, and it's one of those things that I think can be, that we can all be proud of moving forward, and it can also have a real impact on the values of property in the community, the attractiveness for new families coming into the community, and the like. So I think we've made some good progress. I think we're going to continue to refine those numbers and get them more specific, and frankly, in a pretty fast pace. But I think it's important to also make sure that we are availing ourselves of the services that would be, that's the update, and that's the pitch. One other thing just to note, which I think is interesting, is that the town of Hartland, as of the last population count, is now the third largest community in Windsor County. And we have gotten there over a period of time. That is a change, both in our total community size, as well as our makeup, as well as our relative importance to other parts of the region. And I think that's exciting, but it also means we have an opportunity to take on these kinds of projects in a proactive way. So happy to be continued help in trying to work through this particular one at the intersection to make sure that we can do it in a way that makes sense, as well as other efforts along the way.
Thank you.
The planning grant that you mentioned, where would that be from?
So there are municipal planning grants that are available, I believe it's through the state, and I think the next deadline is October 1st for them. I think that's the one annual. I think that's right. Right. Right, it's through the state.
So Matt, we have a couple numbers here. The number from Green Mountain was actually 68,000.
Yep.
But the number for burying it was a bit more, was 190.
That
The
was
number.
the conduit and the
And,
excavation.
and the excavation.
Although that's, I wouldn't say that's with a 20% contingency.
Contingency. Okay,
Not
so,
a max business.
well,
but
I'm just,
I think that's kind of high. But that's-
yeah. And then, I'm just, so that comes up to 258 if we use those numbers.
Yep.
And then surely we're gonna get up toward 300,000 when we add the other three components there.
It's, look, as I said, I think once you get all the different folks who will be participating together,
Be a
then
little-
there are some economies of
Some
scale.
efficiency, yeah.
But this is not
Okay,
infinitesimal,
It isn't.
but it's also not something you want to do after you dig up
No.
everything once.
The estimate for our project without this is about 400,000, is that right? 450.
Including the 100,000 grant.
Yeah, but we're gonna, I'm thinking of impact on tax bills. So we may be a little under 400, maybe it's gonna be 350, and then I don't know what we have as a contingency with that, whether we're, how realistic that is either. So I'm asking you, where's this money gonna come from?
So
It's
my.
300,000.
I think
approximately.
that, well, I think there's a number of pieces. First of all, my understanding is that it's the board's plan to pay this out of cash over 5 years.
Well,
Is
no,
that-
no. We have a plan about the 350,000 or 400,000. And we also have ideas about changing that plan. But it's gonna come from taxpayers, one way or another. But where are we going to get an additional 300,000 to bury the wires?
So
That's my question.
if I were doing this as a business person, or frankly, as a former legislator, what you'd be looking at is a project that has hopefully, a time horizon of at least 30 years, if not 50 years. And I would assume that financing it would allow for both a very low rate and the ability to spread it out over a period of time, with the hopes of actually doing something that would would have value add to the village, to be able to actually have the depiction of it be what we would all want to see when we come into the community. And that would be true for whether there's putting actual trees I see it as a enhanced project, one that could be financed over a period of time. And by doing that, it would free up resources in the immediate time. And I plan to be here over those next 30 years. And for doing the project right, we'd certainly be willing to have a incremental payment over that period of time for that kind of project. So that's my take on it. I do think that there is a relationship between the how attractive a place is to those property values for the community. I think there's value in the other kinds of amenities that I mentioned before that also increase value. We're already through somewhat dumb luck of being in the right telephone company area to have the fastest internet speeds in the country to the home in most apartment, which is a rare plus. If you talk to Tom Campbell, will tell you it's actually affected sales in Hartland. And we also have one of the largest construction projects, industrial construction projects that took place in North Hartland over the last spring and summer, which I assume will be adding to the tax base, as it should. And we have, I think, an opportunity to continue to build on that positive momentum by doing the village right.
How long can you finance a project for, Dave? Do you know?
Upwards to about 30, 35 years. Do a bond through the bank would be really through 10, and then you gotta revisit the interest rate every year out. You can get a 20-year loan, but it's kind of a variable.
Yeah.
So Matt, when you first talked to me about this several years ago, you mentioned that you thought there would be donors.
That there would be funding, that
There would be people that you could solicit for donations to fund this.
I think I was talking about applying for, there are some national foundations that are focused on beautification of downtowns. I think we certainly could make some kind of appeal to the folks in the community, but I think this is seen as a municipal project in benefit of the community. Look, I wouldn't close the door on anything, but I think it's a little different than the Max Farm bond project or raising money for the paving. So,
Yeah, but look at Damon Hall, I mean, where we are now, so over 100 years, and that was donated to the town.
Damon Hall stuff, right?
So you could say that would be a municipal project, but it wasn't, it was donated. So I could see donations going for this too, because that is simply, as you were saying, to enhance the beauty of the intersection. It's not necessary for the safety of the intersection.
I would say that it is, again, and I think I've said this before in other conversations, that right now you don't notice so much the pole in the middle of the triangle because the whole area looks like a mess, right? And it does, and it has for quite a while. Once you actually do the improvements that you're talking about doing, it will actually stand out more as a sore thumb in the middle of the area. And I would say, look, and you can take a look at other, communities all around us, including, Windsor and Woodstock and Hartford, where the folks in the community take steps to create amenities either through their rec department or through other things that come from the municipality. I have to say that I think it's a responsibility of the whole of the community to make sure that the community that they're living in is one that is livable. If the goal out here is not only safety but walkability, right, which is something that people have talked about for a while. Having one of the businesses now with multiple employees here in the village, that would be lovely. But just doing that without taking, again, hopefully this once in a lifetime moment when everything's going to be done dug up for an entire season, right, which is not gonna be fun for anyone in the village, and not taking the step to make it, actually look nice, we've dug up all these pieces of cooperating entities that are willing to work with you on these projects, I think is a missed opportunity for the city.
I might agree with you on that, but I think there are many people in town who never even notice that triangle, and that they don't, well, they do, okay, they do, they see it as an opportunity to park, and then we're taking that parking spot away.
I've certainly heard those.
Okay, so I'm not sure that your arguments will hold with a lot of people, or at least some people. They won't. I mean, they just like, I don't want to pay more taxes. I don't want to send this, put this project on my children. If it's a 30-year bond, that's where it's going. So, or grandchildren. So I think everything you're saying has is very reasonable, and I agree with you. I don't know if we can afford that.
So, Mary, and all I can tell you is a number of people, from the time of that town meeting,
Mhm.
since, has asked me, are they actually going to go, A, are they going to go forward with the project?
Mhm.
And B, are they going to actually bury the power lines? It's not one or two people, and frankly, it's from people who are multi-generation Hartland people, who have said, I really hope they do it right. And since, over the last several months, and I've not, convened large meetings of folks to talk about this particular issue, if the board feels it's important to get that larger sense of the community, I can certainly do that kind of organizing and mobilizing. But I haven't run into anyone who hasn't said, if you're going to do that intersection, please do it right. In fact, what I hear is either they don't think they should do it at all, that's going to monkey everything up,
Yep.
or please do it right. It's not, please just do the intersection but don't do the other pieces to make it actual usable space that people would want to actually be. Which I think is the risk, is that you do a four-way intersection, it creates kinds of issues that I think many of us have just gotten ourselves comfortable with, whether it's on parking or backing up with traffic. But the hope would be at the far end of whatever compromises come out of that, you actually have space that people would want to spend time and walk around in our central village for the entire community. So
If this wasn't a money issue, I would agree with you 100%. I just am reluctant to ask people for more money.
But are we asking people for more money if we divide that money across a long period of time? Isn't there a difference between sort of the impact of taxes on a 3 to 5 year basis? How many years are we into holding that money now versus the longest possible bond? If we did some fiscal accounting, I'm sure we could sort of see that there wouldn't be much of an impact, but I'm not an accountant. Can't do that for you, but we could ask people to do something like that. So I understand the impact of going to the voters to ask for a change at this time. But this could be an opportunity to include the landscaping, include the burying of the wires, include the additional safety that we've decided was necessary for a walkway from the post office to the library driveway, and also address some of the parking issues by examining the idea of putting parking down by the barn and having various pathways come up from that. I mean, we could look at all of that if we sort of paused at this point and wrestled with this issue, as opposed to just dismissing it, saying we can't do it because we can't afford it.
This sounds like doubling the price of this project.
it's not,
Well, with the things he's talking about.
Well, when are these other things going to be done?
I agree. I just feel like millennials have all this college debt to pay off. They don't know if they'll ever be able to buy a home, let alone looking at taxes on it. And we're this is so far out that they would definitely be impacted by this. I'd like to take that into account too.
If you don't have a walkable community that is actually a nice place to live, you're not gonna have millennials living. It's not, this is, I mean, I think you're making the point exactly. And I don't think that you wanna go through, and I would hate to be a part of advocating for actually moving forward with this intersection project, and at the end, people being upset with the outcome.
They're gonna be upset anyway, one way or another.
But if you make a decision, right, if you make a real decision, you're gonna have some people upset, but I think there's a chance to do this right. And in fact, if you spread this out over 20 years, the kinds of rates that municipalities get, you could end up having lower taxes. I mean, you are able to spread it out over a much longer period of time, and sure, it's all money, but it's on something that has a depreciation of 40, 50, maybe 100 years if it's done right. And that's the kind of thing that you make those decisions. If you're buying, computers, or you're combining things that would depreciate quickly, then you wouldn't do that. But this is hopefully not something that's going to be done every 5 years, and is actually something that can be done right. And I also, the fact that it increases the overall project to do it right, I don't think would be a mistake. But I would say that for those of us that were concerned and asked the question about burying lines, the difference between $1 million and $300,000 is significant. And those that were interested in that and were a little taken aback by something that was going to 2.5 times or 3 times the cost of the project, now knowing that it's a much smaller amount, which it is, I think should have the ability to advocate for actually going forward and doing that kind of project. That we would all feel good about at the far end.
Okay, a few things I'll try to say.
Sure.
For one thing, you mentioned the displeasing appearance of the intersection at present. I forgot what your words were. Ugly?
I would say that.
Yeah, I don't think that's gonna sell very good. I mean, we have a Vermont-looking intersection, and we are aiming to make it look nicer. But telling people they have an ugly center of town is not very nice. So I would not say that.
I don't have to be the one saying that.
Well, I would not say that.
It is said frequently that the current intersection with the triangle is not a particularly attractive feature. Even if you compare it to other
Nevertheless, I would not
centers of town
I would not emphasize that.
throughout the state.
Okay, so, get that off my chest. We have a lot of issues in Hartland that require a lot of money and are going to continue to require a lot of money. We have a lot coming down from the state about our roads. We have ditching problems, and it's basically water quality problems. And because a lot of our roads are steep, we've got a map with red marks where things are not right and things need to be fixed, and that's about half of our roads. And that is gonna cost a tremendous amount of money. It doesn't have to be done all at once, but it's all stuff coming down the road over this same period of time that we're gonna be repaying this bond if we get one. So that's one thing. I don't want to do anything to jeopardize actually fixing the intersection. In fact, we have a vote to do it. All we have to do to move forward with this is get this right of way from you and across the road here and move forward with this project. And we're trying to decide, is there a better way to finance it? Because we have had, just like you said, a plan to repay it in 5 years, which is rather quick. And whether you repay things quickly or over a long period of time is a debate. That a lot of people think about it in a different way. And so that, we haven't settled that, but I think that if the voters are agreeable to do it over a longer period of time, I think that the selectmen would go along with that and want to do it that way. But I think we're talking somewhere between 10 and 20 years
Okay.
for what we call long-term. But I just want to make sure that we actually get this project done. And it's done for safety, for being able to easily walk in a safe way from one side of the road to the other. You cannot do that now, the way this road works. Absolutely, you have to stand on the edge and hope for the best.
I do it every day.
Yeah, so you know what we're talking about. And it's just particularly bad for children and people that don't move as fast as you do, which we have a lot of. So, I'm pretty skeptical about the idea of spending that amount of money. And as far as a grant's concerned, we're hoping to get a grant for the little piece of sidewalk to connect over to the library driveway. That's a possibility. But we're probably not gonna do that at the same time we do the road, do the intersection. But, we have had a grant in the past, toward the other sidewalks, and if we're patient, our turn will come up and we'll be able to possibly get that. So, because it's about all I have.
Sure. So, just for clarity, the grant that I was mentioning, the municipal planning
Mhm.
grant, is a separate pot of money.
Okay, that may be, yeah.
And I would, all I would say is, it was incredibly helpful when I was in the legislature,
Mhm.
to have resources to the planning commissions and other entities to help walk through examples that they've seen 100 times over, different financing options, different places to pursue resources, either at the federal or foundation or other levels, to be able to get more return on dollars. And so I would encourage the board, it's a relatively short timeframe, but I don't think it's a complicated proposal for resources so that you could have the planning commission give the same kind of service that they're giving to other communities that are larger and actually put more money in the planning commission to be able to get those kinds of planning services from them. So I think that would be of value. And that, I mean, I think the other thing that I would say, Gordon, is that I was there when we voted for the intersection.
Mhm.
And I would say that all of the options for how to do the intersection were not on the table at that time. There was not, since, there was questions about, could you bury the power lines? There was not a discussion about whether there would actually be a tree planted anywhere along what will be a large expanse of, gravel, whatever it would be. And I think that there is an opportunity for discussion of investing a bit more, especially if it's spread out over a long period of time, to make sure that our central village is as attractive as possible. So those are, I don't think it's like they voted for that and they don't want to vote for anything else. And it may be right. It may be that the community, says no, we don't want to do that at this moment in time. But I think it's a worthwhile thing to bring up, since I sure wouldn't want to have the intersection dug up 4 years from now if people decide, oh, we should have really buried it before, and then you try to go back in and do it later.
Landscaping was not forgotten when we were discussing the board was discussing the intersection. But I think we felt that we needed to have the project done and then move on to landscaping at another, maybe even the next year, but soon after. One of the issues is that we believe it's a cement road going around the corner with many layers of pavement on top of it. And one of the engineers said, oh, you just skim off the pavement and put down 6 inches of topsoil. well, 6 inches of topsoil on top of a foot of concrete, I guess wouldn't grow a tree real well.
I wouldn't
And so that,
count on it.
that was something that we did discuss and talked about, and we've got to make sure that the concrete gets smashed up and taken away, or we're not gonna have anything there. But we have trees, I'm sure you've noticed, between Route 5 and the library, all along the side of the road. And that did not cost the town very much money. And we can do landscaping another time. I'm sure that the desire to do it is here in the community, and it will happen.
The two are interrelated.
Of course they are.
The ability
We don't have to plan landscaping at the same time we do the road.
unless the landscaping you would want to do would be prevented because
By
there
wires.
is a large utility pole and a huge number of wires coming off of it, going in all directions, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the place where the statue is now, and that triangle, which was one of the three corners, did not have wires going every which way across it. And I think that was probably by design at the time. And I think this is a moment where you do that design in a more comprehensive way. It would certainly give more optionality if you did bury the lines. It's also, I would also add, and there are people who are more knowledgeable than I am on this, is that burying utility lines are safer when you actually have more utility and electrical lines in conduit. The likelihood of them getting hit, affected by ice, falling, the like, is much higher, and the maintenance cost on them is lower across the board. And that's why in many parts of the country they've started doing that as the automatic default, is burying utility lines across the board. So on a safety front, while I would say it's not the same thing as traffic safety, there is a good argument to be made that actually burying that utility package is a lot safer for the community in the times of inclement weather.
Yeah, I think it's certainly it's true, yeah. Rob?
May I just ask two brief questions?
Certainly.
One is, on the cost side, are there utility costs, which if the option were taken to bury the lines, are there, surely there are going to be expenses for the utilities with this project regardless. Would any of those be reduced by burying the lines rather than putting up temporary poles, et cetera, et cetera? And my second question is on, I guess, on the revenue side. Would the board be willing to at least map out the cost to taxpayers over, say, taking a long-term bond? Simple, very, very simple math, not including the interest rate, but $300,000 over 30 years, that's $10,000 a year, which I think is probably, that's not a very big percentage of the town and school budgets that are
It is not.
driving taxes. And it's a benefit which is much longer than 30 years.
On your first point, we're only talking about one pole. And there was some talk that it had to be moved at one point, but then they realized it does not have to be moved. So I think there is no cost associated with the utility lines. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So there's nothing, unfortunately, there's no saving
Clarifying.
by burying. Any other thoughts, you? Okay.
At some point, we're gonna have to decide whether we're gonna change the financing or not.
Mhm.
When are we gonna do that, do you know?
Oh, well, were we thinking about a special meeting?
So I believe I believe that could be done at town meeting day. If it would be most convenient.
Is that gonna work out for, I mean, years go by here, as you've certainly noticed. And we're at this point hoping to actually do it next summer, but also realizing that we may actually be another year. So if we wait till town meeting to ask about financing, is that going to interfere with the project?
The answer would be no. I think that if you were to move forward with utilities, the answer is no. I think that it would be, we would need to continue to put this together and hone that in. So I think that that would need to be delayed another summer. I think if the easement process, if we didn't do the easement, utilities, if the easement process fell into place, as did it going back to Teresa, I think that that could legitimately come through and be ready for summertime. That would be cutting it close, but I believe that we can have, it all depends on whether you want to do it with the bonding or with the bank. Bonding is a little bit more tedious just because of the application process, but I think that that could be done in conjunction with the vote. It could be put out into the bond bank, and they make the decision, I think, in May for a June offering, so I think that that would work. I think the bank would go smoother, so I believe that it could work with the town meeting date vote. If feedback I get is now this needs to hurry up and go, then you would need to, I think there's at least a 30-day period of time where you gotta warn it. If not 45, because you need a public hearing in there someplace. I think you need two. Agency of Transportation District 4 did say that they would defer the grant another year.
Oh, that's good. Yeah,
Is-
if-
Oh, go ahead. I'm
The
sorry.
bank option is for 10 years only, is that correct? Bank loan.
It's the safest way to go for an interest rate, because they'll give it 20, but you essentially revisit the interest rate in 10 years, and
okay.
an interest rate
Oh.
then could be 7%, and you end up with a higher interest rate. The bond is a much more stable, fixed, it's not completely fixed, but it's essentially a fixed rate that last time I knew was hovering a little over 3.
Is it voted on by Australian ballot or on the floor?
I believe anything over the 5-year period needs to go to Australian ballot. So it would be by Australian ballot.
Oh. Even the bank loan?
Yes.
Well, sometimes it's hard for voters to understand exactly what we're asking them. As you know.
So it's a good indication of whether or not there is broader support
Yeah,
for a project.
but we have something in place to do this project.
Yep.
And if we're making a change, people need to be able to understand exactly what they're voting on.
And if I could, my understanding is that there is a mechanism for having an option for a bond, that if it is the bonding option is rejected, it would go back to the underlying financing plan.
Yes, we are aware of this.
So to me, it's a relatively low risk mechanism, and I think that you could get, and I would say that the interest in getting excited about supporting something like that and articulating and doing or Matt and I had a conversation about it over at Mike's, is articulating a clear vision of what this could mean for the downtown, for the community, for what this looks like on a longer term basis, what it would free up in terms of capacity, whether it's making sure that we've got the resource to address the kind of back road issues that the state's coming down with, or having the resources to have stairs at the rec center that work. And those are all
Yeah.
real. And so I think there's a be up for doing that. But it's gotta be around a vision for where we're going if we do make that decision on an Australian ballot vote to say we're willing to make a long-term investment.
Okay. We have a BCA meeting at 7:30, so we should probably wind up this discussion if there's, I don't know that we're making any decisions here, are we?
It's up to the board. I will just, again, I'll get into it, town manager update, but just know, we got the audit coming up, we got, town report, and we're gonna get into, the busy season here, so, if you are interested in the bond route, it's not impossible, but, it'll be kind of new to Martin, and the bond application is fairly, can take some time to focus that, to put together, so, we would just want, if we were to go that route, we would just want to make sure that we have the ability to put that together, quality and timely manner.
Well, I think we all think about it, at least until next meeting. I don't know what people think.
If we are going to be looking at a bond, can we look at a bond just for the existing project as defined, and a bond also that would include some of the additional items, possibly landscaping and water red. So at least we have a contrast between the two, and we can sit here and know the numbers as opposed to be hypothetical and scared and so on.
Yeah, something like
You
that.
could actually vote on two bonds as well. So you could finance the project without burying the pipelines and approve the next bond to do the next stage of work.
Yeah, I think we can figure out how to present it to the voters.
Mr. Chairman, just on the planning grant, I know Dave and I hadn't talked about that. I heard about it this morning when I was checking in with some folks. You probably want to jump on that application since it's due October 1, if that was an interest, and I would be, up for helping, if it's useful to put these, if that's useful.
I've had several discussions with them over there on this project and the planning grant, and feedback I've gotten that just on the utility part is it's not really a match for competitiveness.
It was on the, I think it was on, in a discussion around financing and sort of more comprehensiveness to it.
If you look at the idea of capital planning, I think that it gets a bit more, that gets into, I think that Pete might be stretching the putty a little bit there, but, I'll leave it at that. I think that as far as just the utilities go, in that part of this, I think that we can come up with some funding information. I think that would be pertinent to everybody involved. I think that there is room for the planning commission to look at capital planning in a more comprehensive manner. That I don't think is a bad idea. Almost, I think there would be a little bit two separate things there.
I was just,
It's
in
okay.
relation of just
Yeah.
helping, having worked with you on this process,
I know,
which you worked very hard at, just making sure that you've got all the tools and resources, especially
Yeah.
as those resources go to other towns for.
Talk to them about bits and pieces of all of this, and I think there's a larger picture in there that I think would be beneficial to the planning commission and the board. But it is a larger, more comprehensive picture.
Not disagree.
It's okay.
so we can move along.
Just one thing, do you think the information from Comcast and First Light would, in a couple weeks, we might have that before the next meeting? What,
You have an estimate from Comcast. I think First Light will probably be here by the end of the week. They were just trying to get things nailed down.
so we would have that?
VTEL, I wouldn't necessarily predict, but I think we can get it. I do think there is, I do think there is also opportunity to, as I mentioned before, once they know that they're doing it together, to reduce costs. We saw that happen a lot. The other is that we haven't asked the utilities to consider reducing their costs in order to be part of the overall project. They're willing to be amenable and move quickly with us, which is great. But there may be a potential to get that number down once we get sort of a comprehensive look at it. But you got to have all the players on board before you can start to have it.
When you see that it was the same, from VTEL,
Yeah.
if you can give them a little nudge, you're a little silence on the other
I
end.
will do that.
Everybody else said that very good.
Okay, so we kind of jumped over the public comment period, and we have some public here, which we don't usually have. Stuart or Libby's or anyone have anything they want to bring up or ask a question or whatever? Quickly?
I'm just here for the fun of it.
Good. It's a lot of fun. Okay.
It was very helpful to hear the
Mhm.
presentation.
Okay, so I guess we'll move on to the trail.
Actually, if you can, real quick, skip to
Oh.
errors and omissions, I need to print something out quick for the trail that has some language in it.
Okay,
I can do that, and you have the listers, just go over that.
okay. Okay, go ahead, Doug.
I think they've got, you guys have got the.
Get a copy of, you,
We do.
you'd love a copy. So, we warned the meeting to discuss this a few weeks ago. For bringing up power, for utility, value of utility lines, cables, and rights of way and stuff. Typically, they give us a statement every year, and we're meant to just take the value off the statement. We don't, there's no mechanism to verify what they're really worth. We just, that's what we do, take the value of the statement, put that down for the value of the poles, lines, et cetera. Green Mountain Power also owns a parcel of land that we have a separate parcel from that. And this year, I made an error of, I just took the bottom line off of the form, which, should have done that. It basically double, assessed them for the value of the land, which was $244,000. It's on the,
244,400.
yes, so we basically overcharged them by that amount. And so what I asked the board is to correct that as an error in half listers. So to make that, I think I included a copy of the form, it's kind of long piece of paper. Kind of see the two different, the one I gave Dave, I highlighted the two other paper. Showed up in the copy.
No.
There's a number at the bottom, I just took that, and actually halfway up the page is the number I should have taken, on that particular form.
Do we need to make a motion on these to accept these, or how does
I
this?
believe, well, it's, as I understand it, you must approve them in some fashion, I'm not sure what the exact mechanism is.
Besides the BCA meeting, we have to do. Isn't the BCA dealing with the same stuff?
I don't
No.
believe so.
No.
Tonight, you mean the Board of Abatement is tonight?
Yeah,
At 7:30.
yeah,
This is a separate thing.
okay, okay.
So, I made an error in that form, I grabbed the bottom line, I shouldn't have done that, I should have taken the other, so that's where that came from. We warned this meeting, we talked
Yeah.
about this as we were meant to.
Yeah.
And, Judy Helen saw that, and came in, Tom, our reappraisal guy, had just been there and realized between the two of them, like the week, 2 or 3 days before this, the listers had to in for a bathroom that she didn't have. And since this was something that just came to light and we had one meeting we were gonna have anyway, we decided that would be appropriate to include that as well.
Dave, do we have to make a motion for each one of these errors and omissions to accept it, or how does that work?
I would do each one individually, just to get it right.
So I'd like to make a motion that we accept the correction to Green Mountain Power's assessment. Is that good enough wording? Or how would you like it to be said?
Is there dollar amount? I think that's fine.
It is a dollar amount.
There-
You may wanna throw the dollar amount in there.
It's on the form,
The total or
From here to here.
the 244.
Or
Reduced by
the
this
7,298,
You could just say from here to
the
there.
real value change would be,
all right.
Yes, so this is, yeah, that's the difference, right? So I'm proposing to reduce the value by $244,400.
All right.
I got the one you got marked up.
Do I need to say it all over again? So my motion is that we accept the correction on the assessment for Green Mountain Power by reducing it by $244,400.
I'll second it.
Everybody's good with that? Yes, that's unanimous. All in favor?
Yes.
So then the second case, was Judy, and that value was that 2,000?
2,600.
2,600? Did you have any other questions about that?
Make another motion.
Oh, yeah, great. I make the motion that we accept the correction to Judy Howland's property assessment, and it will be reduced by, the value will be reduced by $2,600.
Is the record number the property number?
The span number that shows there, that's one.
Okay. Should we be more specific and say that, or is it include the span number, or do we maybe not need to? Okay.
No, I think just I just think who it is and the dollar amount is fine.
Okay.
Got a second?
Did you second it?
No, he did. Are you gonna second it?
Second?
Okay.
Okay.
Aye.
Yeah, the wheel here.
Yes.
Okay, that passed. Unanimous. Okay, then we have a third one
And the
is,
third one is actually not a change of appraisal, but Craig Smith brought to our attention that he had recently purchased his property, and the previous owner had the veterans exemption of $40,000, and he brought to our attention that that was incorrect. We should have changed that at the time of the sale. That didn't happen, so it changes his tax bill, but it doesn't change his assessed value. But I wanted to include that here because that function happens in our office. So it's gonna impact like I said, it'll impact the tax. So the increased, his assessment had 40,000 taken off the top of it and corrected that. That's not $40,000 worth of tax.
No, it's. I'd like to make a motion that we accept the veterans exemption on Craig Smith's. Are we removing it?
Yeah.
Oh.
Removing the veterans exemption.
Oh, that's too bad for him.
Well, he is very
Very
He
honest.
voluntarily came forward.
All right, I'll start that over then.
Let's go.
I'd like to make the motion that we remove the veterans exemption from Craig Smith's
Assessment.
assessment.
Second it.
Aye.
Everybody's good?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, so we're good with all three. All right, so let's, you got everything
I do, yes,
straightened out, so we can do the
Good.
Blood Hill Trail?
yes.
Okay.
So, I sent out the packet, I had originally said, are you guys available to meet on October 15th, with West Windsor on this? And no sooner did I do that, but I met with West Windsor, Phil joined me, and, we decided to put it off until a little bit later in October, to make sure that we all kind of had our ducks in order on this. So there's just a couple things I need to kind of clean up, but one would be, I did get some dates from West Windsor, the third and the fourth week in October. The dates they threw out for the third week, I think, unless there's 5 weeks in October, being the fourth and fifth, but, October 22nd, 23rd, and 24th. Or what I would recommend, they've got October 29th, 30th, and 31st.
What was it, 29th?
29th, 30th, and 31st. And I would recommend shooting for the 29th and 30th because the property owner can make it that night. So I think that that would be good to try and incorporate her. I just want to go over a little bit of the process. They did have a lawyer look at this, and he recommended essentially it's together, but it's completely two separate
Sequential.
motions, so to speak.
Right.
So we will do a site visit to the area. If we, and I think we're shooting to do this as kind of a combined group. But when we're looking at the Hartland side, it is very much a Hartland Select Board site visit. And when we look at the other trail, it is very much a Hartland Select Board visit. When we are on the West Windsor side, it is a West Windsor Select Board meeting, so they kind of do the talking, and we're essentially spectators at that point. And then we come to our respected corners, so to speak. We will come back to Hartland, and we need to have a public hearing, and they go to West Windsor, and they'll have a public hearing completely separate. The warning for the site visit and the hearing are separate. We put out our own, and they put out their own, but it's kind of a joint exercise here that we're just doing twice. But because it's on both sides of the property line, we both need to do it. So that's kind of it. What I was trying to do tonight, and I believe we have a meeting on next week, on the 17th, but was to get a feel from you as to what the dates, whether those dates, while we're together, and we don't need to do 18 different emails, how these dates look and what your preference would be.
What are the days of the week? Thank
I
you.
got a calendar for her.
He's got a calendar. It's a Tuesday and Wednesday, no, Monday and Tuesday.
I'm out of town the last week of October,
You're out of town completely?
but I don't need to be there.
I'm out of town as well.
There you go.
Still got a quorum. But,
How about, the 22nd, 23rd, 24th, it's not?
that'll work. The property owner will just have, somebody else stand in for her lawyer, or, a
Could you
family
do
member
that?
or something.
No.
Oh, could you do that?
Yeah.
Dave, help me with when the 30 days kicks in. We have 30 days from, if we make a motion to start the proceedings tonight, does that start the time clicking, or we wait till the 17th to do the,
So we do need to make a motion, we need to we kind of moved forward last meeting, but there's two motions we need to officially make. That just moves the process forward. Whatever date we want to have a hearing or the site visit on, 30 days prior, a notice needs to go out. So if we're gonna meet on the 22nd,
We
we need
still
to,
have
I
some
need to
time.
put out a notice before September 22nd.
yes, okay,
That's gonna happen.
yeah, okay, good. I found myself surprised by Martha
Harrison.
Harrison's response that the survey, in fact, is off. And this is a West Windsor problem, it's not a Hartland problem, but I have a feeling that unless West Windsor gets this straightened out, this whole thing is could be delayed.
So I believe she sent me a new map that
Okay.
had the center line with the rock wall was as the start of the two rods. So if you could have the rock wall as the boundary of
Yep.
the trail, and then come over two rods with the center line in the middle, I believe that they fixed that.
Okay,
I believe that was the surveyor's intent. Not sure if she was reading it wrong or whether the survey just didn't show it right, but there's two rods off of the rock wall.
okay,
I can double check, but I believe that.
right.
that
And
was-
those two rods are on the
Renee's,
Johannesson property
correct.
and not on the Dugdale property. Right, okay.
Is everybody good with that? The idea of having a bit narrower, 2 rods instead of 3?
Yep.
For a trail?
Well, it's just a trail, why not? You know, it's
That's
not a
okay.
road, so.
And we have lots of roads in town.
I must not have, I must have skipped over that part in my reading, but why do they want it narrower? Is there a reason?
I think that we may actually end up going out on the other person's other property if it's
that's-
more than two.
Yeah,
But I think that, to come back to Mary's point, I think they felt as though they didn't need, if this was a class 4 road or a class 3 at one point in time, and it's just become a legal trail,
Mhm.
keep, if it had ever been a 3-rod, keep the 3-rod. I think they've decided that since the intent is only to have a trail, that they don't need to do any more than 2.
Chances are the old trail is only 2 rods anyways.
Yep.
We
I,
don't know.
I think it was an issue of going onto the Dugdale property. I thought somebody mentioned that the last meeting.
Yeah, I think that may still be the case if
Yeah.
it were more than 2.
Yeah,
And I think they're fairly, what's the word I'm looking for? That's important, important to keep it
yeah.
here.
Yeah.
Keep the Dugdales happy by the name right
You do.
Yeah,
there. Okay. So I will simply call West Windsor back and say, yep, that week of the 22nd, 23rd, or 24th seems to work good for us. And then I'll try and nail down an actual date. Is there any one of those, Monday, Tuesday, is it a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday?
yes.
Any particular one day better than others?
Not that I know of right
When
now.
are you, you're not gonna be here the whole half?
Those last 2 weeks,
So not the, you won't be here the 22nd, 23rd, 24th?
no.
So it's a problem of going back to where we were on the 15th. That doesn't work?
I don't know if, I'm a little leery about getting the notice done and out
Okay.
by the 15th,
Okay.
truthfully. So I think that I feel more comfortable pushing it back.
We'll push it back, to the first week there in November.
It's not on my list.
Sorry.
I can throw that back at them. It does start getting darker earlier
Yeah,
at that point in
Yeah,
time.
End of the first week is good.
Yeah, let's see.
well, I'm saying just to jump then to whatever that would be, like the
Yeah, we
5th,
would be in
6th,
daylight.
7th, something.
We would be back at standard time, so that would,
Dark.
it would be dark. Unless we went in the middle of the day. So.
you wanna be there?
No, that's one of the reasons I've been going to the meetings now, to sort of make sure I can, I'm as on board as I can be
So you don't mind if you're not present for the,
for this, you know, and I can be present by phone if need be.
oh, okay. So, then,
So any one of those, at the moment, I'll leave it open, see where they're at, as long as I know none of those 3 days are like, that's not gonna work.
what the
So you
hell?
got 22, 23, 24.
Yep.
Pick a day.
Okay,
Okay,
good enough.
that's good.
We technically should do a motion to both initiate and to initiate the discontinuance of the trail and to initiate the proceedings. We should do the discontinuance first.
Wait a minute.
Come on!
How do you
I thought it was the,
Discontinuance first, so you're gonna make a motion, I make a motion to initiate proceedings, and then you're gonna make a motion to initiate proceedings delayed. So you're gonna, to
Okay.
discontinue and then to delay.
Dave, I think it's the other way around. Let's make sure we're doing, I may be wrong. See, Jim Barlow says to approach this as 4 separate proceedings. Number 1, laying out a new trail. Number 2, discontinuing the existing trail. He's pretty specific about that.
So laying out first bill and then discontinuing second.
So you could go with, are you saying to go out
The
with,
same
go with
way.
the Barlow wording then?
Yeah, because
All the way at the
Just the
bottom.
one
Yeah, this, I
notice.
think Cory wants to go with this chronology for the motion. Make a
Well, isn't it
motion.
just reversing this?
Well, it's actually 4 steps.
Well, they have that.
what's happening upstairs?
The Windsor Democratic.
Okay.
If you read the bottom sentence, Phil, that's what Gordon's talking about.
The bottom sentence?
Yeah, right here.
So I could make a motion to initiate the proceedings to lay out a new legal trail on the Johannesson property.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
good. Last sentence explains why.
And then we'll make a motion to initiate proceedings to lay out a new legal trail on the Johannesson property.
So we got, we actually,
I'll second it.
any
Well-
discussion, further discussion?
Is that in West Windsor? though?
No,
It's
No,
in,
it's the Hartland
no,
section.
we have to,
so maybe
do
we should
ours.
say that, the Hartland section,
I guess we should.
you know, something a little more specific than the Johansson property. No?
Make a motion to initiate the proceedings to lay out a new legal trail on the Hartland section of the Johannesson property.
Okay.
At such and such an address? Or is that?
Do you want to make the motion?
No, I was thinking, I would not want to be making that motion, but I think it's pretty important for historical reasons to make it as specific as possible.
Phil, I think it's got the property.
I have the property number here
I think it's got
someplace,
the
right?
property number on there.
Yeah. Parcel, okay, here we go again. I'm making a motion to initiate proceedings to lay out a new legal trail on the Hartland section of the Johannesson property, parcel number 8-29.
Beautiful. I'll second it.
Okay.
Gordon,
Yes?
just a point, the establishment and disestablishment of roads from 1970 on became quite sloppy.
Well, we know that.
But prior to that time, for 200 years, it was thoroughly delineated by number. So that trail has a number in the town road book. Now, we never completed on the Ancient Roads
Yeah.
a map, but there is enough information, and if you were to check, probably with Jay, he would have information, and he could show you where. But if you gave a number, it would help your successors a lot, if you had that number.
Yeah,
For the trail we're throwing out.
yeah, that's a good point, Rob.
Phil, would you mind to say that again?
I was just looking at the Farnsworth survey map to see if there was a
Legal trail number?
legal trail number. I'd like to make a motion to initiate proceedings to lay out a new legal trail on the Hartland section of the Johannesson property, parcel number 8-29.
You know, we could correct that at the next meeting with a trail number, you know?
You're gonna have a whole lot of more steps to this, so you're kind of initiating the procedure here. So I think that if you care to give the number down the line, you can. In the meantime, I think you label it Blood Hill Trail will be fine. When you discontinue, it doesn't have a number yet as far as what we're gonna set up with the name. Just to initiate the proceedings too.
But the current one must have a number.
It's got I don't know what the number is, but there'll be 4 more steps down the line here. I think you're initiating the procedure to discontinue and to initiate, so I think you're okay. If you simply, you're initiating, it doesn't have a name anyways. And I think if you discontinue the Blood Hill Trail on this particular property and the parcel number, there were no other trails on this parcel number to begin with, except for what we've got there now. So I think that you're fairly,
Is the new one gonna have a different name? Because really, we're just relocating it.
you can, well, it's no longer off of the Blood Hill Road, though, because this one connects to actual Blood Hill Road, which is still a road in front of her house.
So the new legal trail will not be called Blood Hill Trail?
Well, I guess that's for future conversation. I don't know what the name is. You can name it whatever.
The new trail starts way down here. Is that right? Whereas the other one started in the yard
Correct.
at the end of the road.
The Blood Hill Trail actually connects to, there is a Blood Hill Road in West Windsor that stops right at her driveway, which is now the Blood Hill Trail that goes up to her property. That would be discontinued, and then the one initiated would be farther down the road, and it would be something, it would be no longer attached to Blood Hill Road.
And then we're using multiple names here. It's Bloodhound on the survey map, and it's
Oh.
Blood Hill.
Oh, goodness.
What? I see a Blood Hill Road here.
But under the recreational trail, the trail itself, it's Bloodhound Trail. Just above Renee, on parcel number 2.
I don't think this same map. Oh.
Okay, again, I don't know
Yeah.
if we need to be, I think our intent is to initiate the proceedings here,
Simply
not to sort
initiating
of
the proceedings.
drill down at this point.
Yes.
So I'd like to make a second motion to initiate proceedings to discontinue the existing legal trail known as the Bloodhound Trail. Could be the Blood Hill.
Bloodhound?
Well, that's what it is on the map.
Is there a map, is that a recorded map in Hartland? Is there a map, maybe a reference number?
Yeah, well, this is, he's got a seal.
Yeah. We just work with maps all the time.
This is where he's located.
Yes, yes. problem, this isn't a recorded map.
It's just a survey map.
It's a survey, but it doesn't appear to be recorded. See, it's all.
Well, it's
blank
got a
right
state seal there.
now. Yeah, that's separate
Okay.
from this, is what.
Oh,
it's referring to.
here,
Correct.
Okay.
now.
So this one,
So I guess you,
this is just okay, this is the same thing, just like,
yeah,
Maybe they're
So-
changing it.
yeah. What it's worth for, in my office, I can't use stuff unless it's been recorded, so I don't know how that might
Okay.
impact you guys.
so,
Maybe they're changing the name.
Well, let's research that name so we get it right.
okay, so we,
But we still can initiate this. It's either one or the other.
okay.
I mean, it's definitely written Hound here.
Were you seeing it written how? It's because you're not looking at the right, that's not the right trail. You're looking at the wrong parcel there. This is the parcel right here, where the pond is.
You know, we're looking at,
But that's the new trail.
This right here
That's
is,
the old
this is the old trail.
it's got parcel, parcel number 2. Okay.
So this is the old,
Yeah,
this is the new,
oh,
and this is a whole separate. This is the old, so this would be new, so whatever they've given the name to that.
but here's Best Road over here.
Yeah,
So I thought this was all the new one up here.
that is new,
Yeah.
this is the old right here,
Okay,
old trail.
okay, so I'm not going to name a trail,
Old trail coming off of, so right here you've got
it's just called Old Trail.
Blood Hill Road, right here. So I don't see where you're coming up with Bloodhound.
Well,
Right here.
just right here.
That's separate, that's a different, that's the new trail. This isn't, this would be the new trail here, whatever you're looking at for Bloodhound, this is the old trail right here. It comes down to there.
Okay. Let's
Dave,
leave it
can
out
you-
entirely.
Clarify. I assume this is the old trail.
The old trail is right here,
Start here.
coming
Yeah.
down
Yeah,
to
all the way to
there. This is
the new trail.
the new trail.
Does that start all the way down at this road?
It does,
Starts here, follows this,
Kings Highway, whatever that is. Yep,
all right.
Kings
so-
Highway, and they,
So this is the new trail.
that's the new trail.
And why does it say Bloodhound Trail?
I don't know, but this is Blood Hill Road, off of Blood Hill Road, so this is existing, Blood Hill Road. This is what is now a legal trail, Blood Hill Road. Used
Is
to be
this
a
their-
class 4.
Is this their house right here? Yes, that's house.
Yep, so Blood Hill Road used to go
Yeah.
all the way like that.
Yeah,
But this part of it now is their driveway.
So now they want the new trail to do this.
Exactly.
And go down.
Yep.
Well, somebody wrote, I guess it doesn't matter.
well, maybe the new one is going to be named Bloodhound.
That's what I,
Something over there is
That's what-
Bloodhound. I'm not
That's what it says.
familiar with that, but that's not the old one.
Okay.
But you can
So
leave it
Martha,
out.
what do you have so far with that?
I have a big mess. That's what I have. Your second motion is to initiate proceedings to,
Discontinue the existing legal trail on the Hartland section of the Johannesson property. Parcel 8-29. Oh, wait a minute. Looks like parcel 3 is where the old trail is.
maybe we don't need to put that number in there.
Okay.
I'll second.
Good. I think this,
problem with it?
I think it's not a surprise.
Yeah.
For all that exact information.
Are we good with this?
Because, I think at some point that map has to be submitted as what they call evidence, so I think that that would give you your benchmark.
Is everybody good with this?
Yep. Yes.
Yes.
Okay, we're good.
And Dave, you don't think we have to say the other two things that we're gonna do, like have an open public hearing and,
Actually, I think Dave warns it at a separate time,
okay, and
within
then,
30 days.
and then the new trail, we don't have to say that tonight in a motion?
You see it when you warn it. Correct?
The name of the new trail?
No, just that we're going to,
So I think the
Have I-
next meeting, which I think is still scheduled for the 17th.
Well, that's,
We
a-
need to talk about
we need
that.
to talk about that.
Which would be preferable, but you can actually set a date for a hearing and time at that point in time. If we wait an extra week, that would have to happen. I'd have to have the warning right there and then at the next meeting, if it's not on the 17th, is the 22nd or 24th, would mean that we can't meet until the 24th.
how about the, can we meet on the 18th, Tuesday?
Well, let me just refresh everybody's, Martha's, I think, initiated this, and we would have normally met on the 4th, but we moved to the 10th,
Yeah.
and if we could then wait 2 weeks for all the rest of the
Wait.
meetings, we will get through October, because there are 5 Mondays in October. Without, we
But
can,
you're saying you prefer us to meet next Monday?
Yeah, but we're gonna meet October 1st.
You're gonna mess up.
We don't
Yeah,
have to.
You're gonna have to,
You gotta do it at some point.
you're gonna have to catch up sooner or later.
well, let me just.
I was
just
planning on being here October 1st.
And I can't be here the 24th.
Of September? I won't be here the 1st of October.
I could be here, how about, I don't know, the 8th, if you can't do the 17th, I could do the 18th, I could do the 25th of September.
I have no problem with the 17th of September.
Oh, you don't, oh, okay. Next
I
week.
just didn't understand that we were meeting.
Okay.
I don't care. We were just trying to stagger all the meetings at two weeks apart, that's all.
So
But
keep
we don't
it-
have to.
We'll meet on the 17th, and then our next meeting will be October 1st, but I won't be here. But that's-
You
Oh,
will
we
be,
We,
okay.
we could meet the 8th and the 22nd, too, in October. Doesn't
Just the
matter.
15th.
You got an extra Monday.
Okay. Phil can't be here on the 22nd.
Well, what are we talking about, meetings now, Monday
Yeah,
meetings?
yeah.
I'm not here on the 15th.
So it's not gonna
I'm on
matter.
the 22nd.
He's gonna miss a meeting. So we could meet on the 8th and 22nd in October, or we meet on the 1st and 15th, doesn't matter.
Well, the 1st
So-
is better because the 22nd is when we're supposed to.
So let me rephrase that, then you should make a motion that says that you will meet on the week of the 22nd to 26th to set a site plan and a hearing, and then the notice will be, have a final date on it. But I would feel more secure that we have an actual date to set, which would be, you could set that on the 17th.
Of September.
At the end of the day, this is West Windsor.
Yeah, well,
You know.
that's part of the problem, is that we're dealing with another board trying to lock in their date.
But we don't have to meet on the same night that they're meeting.
No? I don't think we
I
do.
don't think we do.
No, not from what I read, we don't. So if they can't make it the 22nd, we can do it anyway on the 22nd.
Right. And, yeah. those meetings need to be fairly back-to-back, if not the same night, so we know we're not gonna get hung out to dry, and they know what's happening. Okay,
Mary's got a certain point.
right.
There's some idiosyncrasies to this.
So these are the days we're gonna meet to walk the trail.
So, yeah.
We don't have to walk the whole trail. We can just-
No, if you put a race.
No, Mary's bringing her hiking shoes, we're walking the whole trail.
Well, I'm not bringing hiking shoes for everybody, I'm just bringing my own hiking shoes. So you better bring your own.
All right, so to be clear, we are meeting next Monday, the
Yes.
17th,
Yes.
for our second.
We can then go 3 weeks and meet on the 8th. That works for us. Or we can meet on the home, have 3 in a row.
And then our first meeting in October will be Monday the 1st.
Yeah, I can't be there.
On Monday the 1st, you can't be?
I cannot.
I cannot either,
Okay. Well,
So let's jump to the 8th.
Monday the 8th.
I can't be there
So
either.
let's just, you know what, let's just go with it. It'll be the 22nd through the 24th.
Yeah.
We won't meet until the 22nd.
Really?
What?
And, the 24th, so we can meet the 24th of October, or it's going to need to be the first week in November that we can meet, if we want to do this at the same time as West Windsor.
But,
What about our regular?
yeah, what about our
select
regular
board
meetings? That's what we're talking about now.
So you don't want to meet on October 1st.
I'm not saying that.
So-
I can't be there on
Well,
October.
that's 2 of you, so
Yes.
there seems to be a preference to have it on the 24th, to keep these in 2-week increments. So why don't you just do that, and West Windsor will just have to adjust.
Oh, because you can't warn the meeting to walk the trail, is that why you're saying that?
Wouldn't it make sense to have a regular meeting on the 8th, and then still do whatever we have to do on that?
But that's in October, we were talking about doing it in September.
Well,
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
October.
Yes.
So the problem here is if we want to do this together, I don't know when West Windsor can meet. I'm getting a feel from you guys as to when we can meet. I will then wake up tomorrow morning, give them a call and say, hey, how does the 22nd through the 24th sound? They'll say that sounds good. How about the 23rd? And then we've got a date,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
of which technically I could just put in the warning and we'd go forward, but it might be a little cleaner if you actually set that date officially at a board meeting,
Which we can do next Monday.
which you can do on the 17th, correct? On the 24th, we can still do it for October 24th. Now we can't. And if we could then go up on the 25th, then we wouldn't hit the 30-day mark. So it would then need to be, we can't do the 4th week in October, so then it would need to be a meeting, a site visit in the first week of November.
But we're presuming now that they're gonna say, okay, 22nd, 23rd, or 24th, right?
But we don't know which one of those dates out of the 3.
No, but by next week, the 17th,
We would know.
right, and then we'll have plenty of time for that 30-day notice. Or, not plenty of time, but we'll have a window.
So I would make a motion to you're gonna make a motion to have a site visit and a hearing either October 22nd, 23rd, or 24th. And then I will take that information and make up a warning, of which it will be one of those 3 days.
This doesn't need to be official, does it? Is everybody good with that?
Well, I just don't know why we can't just set that date next week.
Because you don't wanna meet until the 24th.
No,
Why not?
no, we're meeting the 17th.
We are all talking in circles, and if
Yeah.
we're,
I don't know why
Then
it's
let's
so
meet on the
confusing.
17th.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
we're meeting on the
Thought we already
17th.
decided that.
Well, then we got talking about the 8th and having 2 weeks in
Right.
between the
Yeah,
meetings.
we're meeting in a week, in September. Then we're going to October. We're gonna meet on the 8th, and then we're gonna meet
All right.
one of these days.
So we are meeting on next week on the 17th.
Yep.
Yes.
Fine,
And then by that time, you'll know the date,
absolutely.
and then we can make that motion, okay?
Easy, it's so easy.
We're good. Look it up.
Nothing to it.
That was the easiest item.
Wow.
Jeez.
Okay, so we've got enough to meet our requirements of this process. We've got enough done. Okay, let's call it we do. Okay, so. Okay, let's move on to this. We've got to do this conflict of interest policy. We need to sign this, I believe. You didn't find the old one?
Actually, we can, I think we can, I found the minutes and I've submitted that. And unless I hear otherwise, I would say that I think we're good. So I think we could skip this.
Oh. Only take a minute to sign it. That's what I was.
So there's one already in place, is that the answer?
That's my understanding, yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. We'll skip that. Call it done. So we're ready to talk manager's notes?
So actually, I got a fair amount to go over here. So I spoke briefly about the Cuicci paving. We did that a little bit different, pushed that up a couple $1,000 more than we had anticipated. Brownsville Road is up next. Anticipate that being done, or at least started before the end of September. I just wanted to, and in addition to that, we're continuing, I mentioned the last meeting, maybe the meeting before, that the deficiency of material on the roads was causing us problems that we've been kind of talking about on and off for the summertime. So I did tell Bill to, we're essentially subcontracting with truckers to bring in material, of which we're dropping, and we've been doing that for a few weeks now, and we'll be doing that at least into next week. I did want to just take a moment to go over the highway budget and the fund balance, just to kind of explain why there's a certain comfort level in doing this, as well as tinkering with the paving. And I should also mention that next week, or actually this week, Greg, who we had last year we're starting 2 days a week as of this week, and then October 15th, we will start bringing him in essentially 5 days a week in preparation of going into the winter time. Just a couple of the things, obviously, that we'll have him doing in the short term is the cemeteries, mowing around the Hartland signs. We've got to do some cutting out on Brownsville Road, preparation of the paving. He'll help with the traffic control and some of that stuff. So there is a need. So we do have some activity in the highway department, and which I think is beneficial for the roads. But I did want to just take a moment as to why or where this resources to do this might be coming from. So on this sheet that I've handed out, we have a beginning fund balance as of the end of 2017 fiscal year for June 30th, 2017. That was at $317,521. In fiscal year 18, we had a net increase in that fund balance of $70,236. That's essentially a net change for the positive of $70,000, giving us $387,757. Now remember, out of that 70,000 for fiscal year 18, we didn't do any paving. The paving budget is $80,000, so, and we used 5 of that for, to look at Cuicci Road. Have Mike Willis take a look at that. So that net change in fund balance of the 70,000 is roughly not doing any paving. And this year, we've already talked about doing extra paving, essentially Brownsville Road, and what little we did on Cuicci. So out of that 387,757 number, the excess paving that we plan on doing, above and beyond the 80,000 that we have budgeted for this year, is about $55,000. And then don't forget in fiscal year 18-19, we utilized 75,000 to offset the general fund, and then another 15,000, give or take a few dollars, to keep the tax rate lower. So if I subtract that out as well, that gives us 242,589. We're still expecting that FEMA reimbursement back, which is coming very close to coming back to us, leaving us with a fund balance of over $307,000. So I think that we will maybe run $20,000 over budget on subcontracting because of what we're doing. I think we should look at doing it in the spring as well, to put down material. But this is just fiscal answer to maybe what you might be thinking by going out and dropping the material that we're doing on some of these roads. It's not a whole lot, but I think that it does help. In talking with the local roads folks, Todd Eaton and Stuart Johnson, who came, both of them made comments about, at this point in time, the roads are primarily made of stone and sand even, and the need for material is quite apparent. The other takeaways that we had from their visit was there is a percentage of the roads that are lower than the shoulders, and in some places that's fixable, somewhat quickly. In other places, it's pretty deep. Obviously, the answer there is kind of knocking off those berms and or doing some ditching, both of which, as Gordon pointed out, the state is asking us to do going forward kind of anyways. So we will be kind of tackling that. But, as we hear some of these comments about the potholes and the road situation, a lot of it has to do with, one, the fact that there's no material on these roads, essentially sand and stone, and also the fact that, the water, they're crowned, so that's a good thing, but the ability to get it off of the road completely over the side is a challenge. And as Gordon pointed out earlier, we do have quite a few that are hilly and are narrow and are just, this is kind of going to happen over time, but it's things that we need to address going forward. So that's kind of it. There was a fair amount of activity in the highway department the past month. I also wanted to point out that the same folks, Stuart Johnson, came and worked on the grader with these guys. I think it was good learning, a good experience for them. I think it gave them kind of a chance to kind of some repetition and repeat of knowledge. And I think that some of the others that haven't spent time on the grader, like BJ, I think it was good for him as well. So I think that all in all, I think that was pretty good. The next big item for us is the buildings and grounds in the activity center.
Dave, can I, is it a dead end with 3 or 2 Twin Rivers to get any funding to help with the inventory of the hydraulically connected roads where the
No, so
brooks?
we have grant funding coming up, and an inventory will occur, probably next spring,
Right.
which is beneficial to us, because it, essentially will give us priority areas, some of the worst-case areas.
Right.
It's strictly to the hydro-connected areas,
Mhm.
but we have a lot of those, but again, they tend to be in steep areas and obviously access to runoff, but, or rivers or streams, but it does give us a good working for the back roads anyways, not
Right.
for the pavement, or less so for the pavement. But it gives us kind of a planning tool to work with as far as, where to put resources in the highway department as far as ditching goes, or subcontractors to do the same work.
Okay.
It would be nice to do an inventory of the paved roads, which comes back to kind of some of that planning grant money that Matt was talking about earlier. It's kind of a smaller chunk of that overall picture of our needs financially, but that's also kind of a, where do we go for, we've kind of picked Brownsville Road here. Cuicci Road is certainly on the horizon, but we've got quite a few that
Yeah.
need to be addressed.
Well, Lowell Brook doesn't cross where we're paving, so we're okay.
Buildings and grounds, important here. Last meeting, I mentioned that we were going to mess with the clapboard on the front of the activity center, to the right and to the left of the door there. I guess I'll look at the glass half full on this. Obviously, we got into it and it was much worse than expected. And that's not just, the backing of the wood that holds the clapboard on, which is kind of what we were expecting to be rotten, if anything, but it was down to the framework and the sill underneath both of the windows. So what was happening is the water's kind of coming off the roof, getting into the window sill, the side of that, and coming dripping down, essentially in the interior down to the sill. So that is going to add to that portion of the project. But I'll look at the glass half full in that I'm glad we're doing it now and we're not opening that up another 5 years from now, because it would be much worse. But nevertheless, it was not anything that, Josh and I thought it might be kind of wet behind the clapboard, but it was down to the sill, and I believe, at least in one case, I'm gonna guess it's the same thing on the other side. We're getting close to 7:30, so I'll just mention the FEMA money is due to come back fairly soon. Other than, we're turning the corner here with the season, and we're starting to look towards the budget and the town report, which is gonna start taking up a lot of our focus administratively going forward.
Is the new employee gonna be part-time or full-time?
So he is essentially doing what he did last year. At the moment,
You
I
mentioned
don't,
he was gonna work 5 days a week. Does that make him full-time or part-time?
so I would say that he is part-time or full-time through till March.
Do we have to give him benefits?
My understanding is the answer is no.
Looks like those guys are doing a good job on the activity center, the painter and job.
Yeah, I think it's got some challenges there. I think that, painting will still, I think it's needed to be done in a little much better. But I would expect that position to probably be a budgetary item discussion in November at some point. It's a cross between buildings and grounds and highways. I was picking that up.
Did you say maybe next week on the Brownsville?
I would say the end of September. You say?
Should we check with the league about whether that's an interesting question, is he part-time or full-time?
I have looked into this in the past in another scenario, and the answer from them was no. But obviously, my understanding of it at this point is no.
Does anybody have anything they have to bring up?
Oh, actually, I did. I noticed you're closing the roads when you're grading. I understand why you're doing it. What happens if there's a medical emergency?
I don't think at any time, the roads are no better or worse than when we kept them open. So I suspect that anybody will be able to get through.
And my other point is, you get the boy that cried wolf scenario, you know? So when that road really is closed, sometimes everybody's gonna run up the road because that's what we've been doing all along.
So technically, the road is closed. We would prefer people not to drive on it. That's why we put the road closed sign. It's become too much of an issue with, we go the other way, we leave it open and we get more complaints, or we get more issues by leaving it open. If somebody lives on Cuicci Road, for instance, they can, and should be able to get in and out of their house.
But if you've got a contractor coming to town to work and they pull up and the road's closed, or an ambulance shows up and they don't know how to get around, I think that's gonna be more of a risk than letting traffic up through myself.
I'm simply gonna say that, it's not, we don't know the schedule, we did take Cuicci Road where it rained, on one day where we were doing it, we ended up going back there the next. So if we had notified people on the road that we were gonna go to next, that it was gonna be closed, and it wasn't closed, it wasn't open or closed until the day after. It's damned if we do, damned if we don't, and at the moment, I'm gonna say we're better off keeping it closed. It is passable if they need to get through. And two of our workers are fire department members and carry radios on.
I was wondering if we could be more creative with the signs so that you could say something other than just close.
Sometimes you see local traffic only.
I don't know. I can see those issues.
Either way. I notify people that it's gonna be one lane on Cuicci Road due to paving. The guy bitched at me because it wasn't crowded enough. There wasn't enough traffic he either altered his plans and he didn't need to. So it's like, why did you tell people it was gonna be one lane? It's like, okay. Now I, it's trying to take the dart, throw it at the dartboard.
What do we do next?
Adjourn?
Yes. So we're adjourned.